The Venetian Room at the desert and was the crown jewel of Las Vegas in 1962. Crystal chandeliers caught the light like frozen fireworks. White tablecloths stretched across tables where power brokers and performers mingled with mobsters and movie stars. The air smelled of expensive cigars, French perfume, and money. This was the world Dean Martin ruled, a world of glamour and danger, where every smile had a secret and every handshake could be a death sentence. Dean Martin sat at his usual corner table, the one that gave him a view of both entrances. He looked relaxed. He always looked relaxed, with his trademark smile and scotch on the rocks sweating in the Nevada heat. At 45 years old, Dean was at the absolute peak of his career. His records topped the charts. His movies made millions. His shows at the Sands were sold out weeks in advance. But Dean Martin wasn't just a star. He was a survivor in a world where the line between entertainment and organized crime was drawn in disappearing ink. 3 feet behind Dean's chair stood Frank "Quick" Russo, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of still watchfulness that made people uncomfortable. Frank had been Dean's bodyguard for 7 years, hired not because Dean was paranoid, but because Dean was smart. Frank didn't talk much. He didn't need to. His eyes did all the work, constantly scanning, constantly calculating, constantly looking for the thing that didn't belong. Frank's nickname came from his hands. Quick hands. He'd been a boxer once, a good one, with reflexes that made other fighters look like they were moving through water. But an injury had ended that career, and he'd found his way into protection work. When Dean's manager had introduced him in 1955, Frank had said exactly 7 words. "I'll keep you alive." That's the job. Dean had hired him on the spot. Tonight felt different. Frank couldn't articulate why, but 7 years of keeping someone alive teaches you to trust your instincts. The restaurant was too quiet. The usual faces were there. Casino executives, high rollers, a few connected guys who always showed up when Dean was in town. But there was something in the air, a tension, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Dean noticed it too. "You feel that quick?" Frank's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, something's off." Dean considered leaving, but it was too late. The food was already coming. The waiter approached, a man Dean recognized from a dozen previous dinners. Giuseppe, mid-50s, Italian accent still thick after 20 years in America. He set the plate down with a flourish. Veal piccata, Dean's favorite, with roasted potatoes and asparagus. "Compliments of the house, Mr. Martin," Giuseppe said, smiling. "Chef Mario made it special for you." Dean smiled back, thanking him warmly, watching as Giuseppe disappeared back toward the kitchen. Frank moved immediately. This was the ritual, the same ritual they performed hundreds of times. Before Dean touched his food, Frank would taste it. Every dish, every drink, every time. People thought it was paranoia. Frank knew it was insurance. He picked up Dean's fork, cut a piece of the veal, tasted it. The flavor was perfect, butter, lemon, capers, exactly how Mario always made it. Frank took another bite, this time the potatoes. Normal. He tried the asparagus. "We're good," Frank said, stepping back. Dean picked up his fork and began to eat. 3 minutes later, Frank felt the first cramp. The pain hit his stomach like a fist. Sharp, sudden, wrong. He'd been standing behind Dean's chair, watching the room, when his gut clenched so hard he nearly doubled over. He caught himself against the back of Dean's chair. Quick. Dean turned, fork halfway to his mouth. "Something's," Frank's voice caught. Another wave of pain, worse this time, radiating from his stomach into his chest. His vision blurred at the edges. He knew this feeling. He'd seen it before in Korea, when a guy in his unit drank water from the wrong stream and started convulsing an hour later. Poison. "Don't eat that," Frank managed to say, but his legs were already giving out. He stumbled, caught the table, sent Dean's water glass crashing to the floor. The crystal shattered. The noise cut through the restaurant's gentle murmur, like a gunshot. Every head turned. Dean was on his feet instantly. "Quick, what's wrong?" Frank tried to answer, but his throat was closing. The pain in his stomach had become fire, spreading through his intestines like acid. He could feel his heart hammering, too fast, irregular. His hands were shaking. Sweat poured down his face. "Call an ambulance," Dean shouted. "Now!" The restaurant exploded into chaos. Waiters rushed forward. Customers backed away. Someone was screaming. Frank felt hands on him, lowering him to the floor. The crystal chandelier above him fractured into 1,000 points of light, each one stabbing into his eyes. Dean's face appeared above him, close enough that Frank could see the fear, the confusion, the beginning of understanding. "The food," Frank whispered. "Don't eat the food." Dean's eyes went wide. He looked at the plate on the table, still mostly full, and then back at Frank. "Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Quick, no. Not accident," Frank managed. Blood was pooling in his mouth. He could taste copper. "Meant for you." The restaurant manager appeared, phone in hand, announcing the ambulance was 2 minutes away. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. Frank lay on the floor of the Venetian Room, surrounded by strangers in expensive shoes, feeling his body shut down system by system. His hands had gone numb. His vision was darkening. He could hear Dean talking to him, begging him to hold on, but the words were coming from far away, like someone calling from the other end of the tunnel. Frank thought about Maria, his wife, 8 months pregnant with their second child. He thought about Tommy, his 4-year-old son, who'd hugged his leg that morning and asked when Daddy would be home. He thought about the promise he'd made when he took this job. "I'll keep you alive." He'd kept that promise. The poison had been meant for Dean. Frank had tasted it first. Like always, he'd done his job. The ambulance arrived in a screech of sirens. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. They asked questions Frank couldn't answer. They checked his vitals and started in 4. They loaded him onto the stretcher and ran for the ambulance. Dean climbed in with him, ignoring the paramedics' protests. Through the haze of pain and failing consciousness, Frank saw Dean's face one more time. The star, the singer, the man whose life Frank had just saved. "Maria," Frank whispered. "Tell Maria." Dean's voice cracked as he lied. "You'll tell her yourself." But they both knew the truth. "Frank, quick." Russo lost consciousness before they reached the hospital. He would never wake up. Sunrise Medical Center's emergency room had seen everything Las Vegas could throw at it. Overdoses, heart attacks, gunshot wounds, knife fights. But when Frank Russo came through those doors with Dean Martin following the gurney, the entire ER went silent. Doctors rushed Frank into a treatment room. Dean tried to follow, but a nurse blocked his path, her face going pale when Dean explained someone had poisoned his bodyguard, that the food was meant for him. An hour passed. Then, too, the sun came up over the desert, harsh and unforgiving. Finally, a doctor emerged. His face told Dean everything before his mouth opened. "I'm sorry, Mr. Martin. We did everything we could." Dean felt the floor tilt beneath him. The doctor explained that the poison was arsenic-based, extremely concentrated. By the time Frank reached them, his organs were already failing. They tried dialysis. They tried everything, but it was too late. Frank didn't suffer at the end. He just slipped away. Dean sat down hard in a plastic chair, the reality crushing him. Frank was dead. The man who'd stood behind his chair for 7 years, who'd taken a bullet of poison meant for Dean's throat, was gone. The police investigation moved quickly. 2 Las Vegas homicide detectives questioned Dean, took the remains of his dinner, interviewed the restaurant staff. It took them 3 days to crack the case. Giuseppe, the friendly waiter with a thick Italian accent, finally broke under interrogation. He'd been paid $5,000 to add a white powder to Dean Martin's veal piccata. He swore he'd been told it was just a drug, something that would make Dean sick, send a message. He swore he didn't know it was poison. He swore he didn't mean to kill anyone. The police didn't believe him, but they believed the name he gave them. Vito Jenna, the head of the Jenna family, a Chicago outfit with operations stretching from Illinois to Nevada. Vito was old school mob, the kind of man who still believed in blood oaths and vendetta justice. He'd been trying to get Dean Martin under his thumb for 2 years, wanted to control his Vegas performances, take a cut of his earnings, use him as a trophy to show the other families. Dean had refused. Politely at first, then firmly. He'd told Vito that he worked for himself, that he didn't take orders from anyone. Vito Jenna had decided to send a message, a permanent one, but the message had killed the wrong man. When Dean heard the name, he sat in his dressing room at the Sands and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The face looking back at him was the same face that smiled from movie posters and album covers. But behind that face was something else now. Something cold and hard and absolutely furious. Frank Russo was dead because of Dean. Because Dean had said no to a mobster. Because Dean had thought he could navigate this world without consequences. He'd been wrong. Maria Russo answered the door with her hand on her swollen belly, 8 months pregnant and radiant. She saw Dean standing on her porch, and her smile faded immediately. "Where's Frank?" Dean opened his mouth, but no words came out. He performed in front of thousands of people. He'd recorded dozens of albums. He could make anyone laugh with a single quip. But standing on this porch, looking at Frank's pregnant wife, he had no idea what to say. "Where's Frank?" Maria repeated, her voice rising. "Dean, where's my husband?" "Maria, Dean's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She knew. Women always know. Maria Russo's legs buckled, and Dean caught her, held her up as she screamed. The sound cut through the quiet suburban neighborhood, raw and primal and heartbreaking. Inside the house, 4-year-old Tommy appeared in the hallway, asking why Mommy was crying. Dean helped Maria to the couch. He knelt in front of Tommy, this little boy with Frank's eyes and Frank's serious expression. "Tommy, your dad was a hero. The bravest man I ever knew." The boy asked where his father was, and Dean had to tell him the truth. "He's gone, son. He's not coming home." Tommy didn't understand. How could he? He was 4 years old. His father had kissed him goodbye that morning and promised to teach him how to throw a baseball when he got back. Daddies didn't just disappear. "I want my daddy," Tommy said, and started to cry. Dean gathered the boy into his arms and held him while he sobbed. Maria sat on the couch, her hands on her belly, tears streaming down her face. A family destroyed because Frank Russo had done his job. Because Frank had kept his promise to keep Dean Martin alive. Dean made a promise that day. "I'll take care of you. Both of you. All of you." He gestured to Maria's pregnant belly. "Everything. College for the kids. The house. Whatever you need. I promise you, Maria. I swear on Frank's grave, you'll never want for anything." Maria looked at him with eyes full of grief and accusation. "I don't want your money, Dean. I want my husband." Her words hit him like a punch. "I know. God, I know. If I could trade places with him." But Maria cut him off. "But you can't. Frank's dead and you're alive, and that's how it is." Dean felt those words like a physical blow. She was right. It should have been him on that floor, bleeding and dying. Frank had a wife and a son and a baby on the way. Dean was single, no kids, nothing but his career and his fame. If someone had to die, it should have been him. "I'm going to find the man who did this," Dean said quietly. "The man who ordered it. And I'm going to make him pay." Maria's response was bitter. "That won't bring Frank back." Dean nodded. "No, but it's all I can do." The man who walked onto the stage at the Sands at night after Frank's funeral was Dean Martin. Same smile, same swagger, same smooth voice singing "That's Amore" to a packed house. The audience cheered. They laughed at his jokes. They had no idea that the man in the spotlight was dying inside. Dean had always been good at masks. You didn't survive in show business without learning how to hide your real feelings, to perform even when your heart was breaking. But this was different. This wasn't stage fright or a bad review or a relationship ending. This was guilt that felt like drowning. Every night, Dean performed. Every night, he smiled and sang and made it look effortless. And every night, after the show, he sat alone in his dressing room and stared at the chair where Frank used to stand. The new bodyguard, a competent man named Lou, tried to fill that space. But he wasn't Frank. He didn't have Frank's quiet intelligence, his absolute loyalty, his willingness to die for the man he protected. Frank had died. For Dean, instead of Dean, the weight of that debt was crushing. Dean stopped sleeping. He'd lie awake in his suite at the Sands, staring at the ceiling, replaying that night in the Venetian Room over and over. If he'd been more careful, if he'd listened to Frank's unease, if he'd just skipped into that night, if he started drinking more, not on stage. He was still professional there. But after shows, alone in his room, he'd work through a bottle of scotch trying to quiet the voices in his head. Maria's words haunted him. Frank's dead and you're alive, and that's how it is. How is that fair? How is that justice? Dean thought about Vito Genna, walking around Chicago, living his life, probably already forgetting about the bodyguard he'd killed trying to murder a singer. To Vito, Frank Russo was collateral damage, an acceptable loss, nothing personal. To Dean, Frank was everything personal. 2 weeks after the funeral, Dean made a decision. He couldn't bring Frank back. He couldn't undo what had happened, but he could do one thing. He could make sure Vito Genna answered for what he'd done, not with the police. The mob owned half the cops in Las Vegas and Chicago. Vito would never see the inside of a courtroom, let alone a jail cell, not with violence. Dean wasn't a killer. He was a singer, a performer, a man who made his living making people happy. But Dean Martin was also connected. 7 years headlining in Vegas had introduced him to everyone who mattered. Casino owners, pit bosses, other families, the people who really ran this town. And Dean knew exactly how this world worked. It wasn't about guns and bombs. It was about respect, reputation, power. Vito Genna had power. Dean was going to take it away from him. The first call Dean made was to Sam Giancana, the head of the Chicago outfit. Sam and Dean weren't friends exactly, but they had mutual respect. Sam had always treated Dean fairly, never pushed too hard, understood that Dean was talent, not property. Sam, I need a favor. When Sam asked what he needed, Dean's voice was steady. Vito Genna killed my bodyguard. Tried to kill me. I want him to answer for it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Sam pointed out it was a serious accusation. Dean told him about the waiter who put the poison in his food, who named Vito, whose confession the cops had on record. Sam was careful in his response. The cops couldn't touch Vito. Dean knew that. I'm not asking you to have him killed, Sam. I'm asking you to make him persona non grata. Cut him off. Make him toxic. Let every family know what he did. Try to kill a civilian performer over a business dispute and got an innocent man killed instead. That's bad for business. That's the kind of heat nobody wants. Another silence followed. Then Sam asked the question directly. You're asking me to destroy his reputation. Dean's answer was simple. I'm asking you to tell the truth about what he did. Sam thought about it. Vito Genna was powerful, but he wasn't part of Sam's immediate organization. And what Vito had done, trying to kill a celebrity, bringing police attention, killing a bodyguard in a public restaurant, was exactly the kind of messy, reckless behavior that the outfit had been trying to move away from. Finally, Sam agreed. I'll make some calls. No promises, but I'll see what I can do. The second call was to Morris Landsberg, the owner of the Flamingo. Morris was legitimate business, mostly, but he had connections everywhere. When Dean explained what had happened, Morris was horrified. Dean asked him to spread the word, to tell everyone who'd listen, to make sure every casino in Vegas knew that Vito Genna was a liability. Morris agreed immediately. The third call was to Frank Sinatra. Frank was in Los Angeles, but when Dean told him what had happened, he got on a plane that night. They met in Dean's suite at the Sands. Dean told Frank everything. The poisoning, Frank Russo's death, Vito Genna's name. Sinatra's face went hard. What do you need? Dean's request was direct. I need you to use your connections. Talk to everyone you know in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. Tell them what Vito did. Make sure they know he's reckless, dangerous, bad for business. Sinatra's response was immediate. Consider it done. Over the next 2 months, Dean Martin orchestrated a campaign of reputation destruction that was as surgical as it was devastating. He didn't threaten anyone. He didn't make demands. He simply told the truth about what Vito Genna had done to everyone who mattered, and in the world of organized crime, reputation is everything. Stories started circulating. Vito Jenna was reckless. Vito Jenna brought heat. Vito Jenna had tried to kill a celebrity and botched it so badly, he'd killed an innocent man in a public restaurant with police crawling all over the investigation. Casino owners started refusing to serve him. Other families started avoiding him. His own organization started questioning his judgment. Vito's power was built on fear and respect. Dean was systematically destroying both. The final move came when Sam Giancana called a sit-down with the heads of 5 families. The topic: Vito Jenna's reckless behavior and what should be done about it. Dean wasn't at that meeting. He didn't need to be. He'd already won. Vito Jenna knew he was in trouble when his own underboss stopped taking his calls. The writing was on the wall. He'd overplayed his hand with the Dean Martin hit. He'd thought killing a singer or scaring him into submission would make him look powerful. Instead, it had made him look weak, incompetent, dangerous in all the wrong ways. 3 months after Frank Russo's death, Vito got word that Dean Martin wanted to meet, face to face. Alone, Vito almost laughed. The singer wanted confrontation? Fine. Vito would oblige him. Then he'd finish what he'd started. They met in a warehouse on the outskirts of Las Vegas. Neutral ground. No bodyguards, no witnesses. Dean arrived first. He stood in the empty warehouse, hands in his pockets, looking calm. When Vito walked in, Dean didn't flinch. You wanted to talk, singer? So talk. Dean looked at him. This man, this killer, the man who put a hit on him and killed Frank Russo instead. You destroyed my life, Dean said quietly. You killed the best man I ever knew. A man with a wife and 2 kids. A man who died because he did his job, protected me from you. Vito shrugged. Collateral damage. Nothing personal. Dean repeated the words slowly. Nothing personal. You murdered an innocent man, and it was nothing personal. Vito's response was cold. He was in the way. That's how this works. No, Dean said. That's how it used to work. But things are changing, Vito, and you're too stupid to see it. Vito's face darkened with rage. You better watch your mouth, Martin. Dean's response was measured. Or what? You'll poison me again? You already tried that. It didn't work out so well for you, did it? Vito threatened to kill him right there, right then. You could try, Dean said. But here's the thing, Vito. You've already lost. Every family in the country knows what you did. They know you're reckless. They know you bring heat. Sam Giancana is done with you. The Flamingo won't serve you. The Sands won't book you a room. You're toxic. Vito's hands curled into fists, realizing what had happened. You did this. You and your connections, Dean interrupted him. I told the truth. That's all. And the truth is you're finished. Vito's rage boiled over. I'll kill you. I'll kill you and that bodyguard's family. Dean's calm finally cracked. You try to touch Maria or those kids, and there won't be a hole deep enough for you to hide in. I promise you that. You don't make the rules here, singer. Vito shouted. Dean's response was quiet but firm. I don't have to, because you already broke them. You went after a civilian. You brought police attention. You killed an innocent man. And in this world, Vito, that's unforgivable. Vito pulled a gun, his hand shaking with rage. I should have killed you when I had the chance. Dean looked at the gun without fear. Yeah, you should have. The warehouse doors opened. Sam Giancana walked in with 6 men, all of them armed. Vito turned, gun still in his hand, and realized he'd been set up. Put the gun down, Vito, Sam said quietly. Vito protested, claiming this was between him and the singer. Sam's voice was ice. You pulled a gun on a civilian, in front of witnesses. That's all I need. Vito looked at Dean, understanding dawning in his eyes. You set me up. Dean's response was simple. I gave you enough rope. You hanged yourself. Sam's men took Vito's gun. They escorted him out of the warehouse. Dean watched him go. Watched this man who'd killed Frank Russo being led away to whatever fate the outfit had planned for him. 2 days later, Vito Jenna's body was found in a car trunk outside Chicago. The coroner's report said arsenic poisoning. The same poison he'd used on Frank Russo. Poetic Justice. Brutal justice. The only kind of justice that world understood. Dean Martin didn't celebrate. He didn't feel triumph or satisfaction. He just felt tired. Frank was still dead. Nothing would change that. But at least he'd kept his promise. The man who'd ordered the hit had paid the price. Tommy Russo graduated from UCLA in 1980 with a degree in business. He walked across that stage in his cap and gown, and in the audience sat Dean Martin, now 63 years old, grayer but still recognizable, still that same crooked smile. Dean had paid for every year of Tommy's education. Private school, summer camps, college, not out of obligation. The monthly checks to Maria had never stopped, but because he'd made a promise to Frank. After the ceremony, Tommy found Dean in the parking lot, thanking him for coming. Dean wouldn't have missed it, telling Tommy that his father would have been proud. Tommy asked a question that had haunted him for 18 years. Was it worth it, dying for you? Dean felt the question like a punch. It was the same question he'd asked himself 1,000 times. No, Dean said honestly, it wasn't worth it. Your father was worth 10 of me. He had a family who loved him. He had a future. He had everything. Tommy asked why his father did it then. Because that was your dad, Dean explained gently. He made a promise to protect me, and he kept that promise even when it cost him everything. That was the kind of man Frank Russo was. He believed in loyalty, in duty, in keeping your word no matter what. Tommy nodded slowly, sharing something his father used to tell him. He used to tell me stories about protecting you. He said it was the most important job in the world. Dean's voice was thick with emotion. It was the most important job to me. But Tommy, listen to me. Your father didn't die because I was worth saving. He died because he was a good man who took his responsibilities seriously. Too seriously, maybe, but that was Frank. They stood in silence for a moment. Tommy finally smiled. You kept your promise too, taking care of us. You didn't have to do that. Dean's response was firm. Yes, I did. Your father saved my life. The least I could do was make sure his family was okay. Tommy shared something else. Something his father had told his mother before Tommy was born. That Dean was a good man. That he treated people right. That if anything ever happened to Frank, Dean would take care of them. Dean's eyes were wet. Your dad was a better judge of character than I deserved. Tommy disagreed. I don't think so. I think he knew exactly who you were. When Dean Martin died in 1995, Tommy Russo was at the funeral. He was 41 years old, a successful business owner with 3 kids of his own. He stood at the podium and told the story his mother had told him dozens of times. The story of a night at the Venetian Room, the poisoned veal, Frank Quick, Russo tasting the food first and dying instead of Dean Martin. People remember Dean Martin as a singer, Tommy told the packed church, as a movie star, as a member of the Rat Pack. But I remember him as the man who kept his promise to my father, who took care of my mom when she was a widow with 2 kids, who paid for my education, my sister's education, who showed up at our birthdays and graduations and weddings, not because he had to, because he wanted to, because that's who he was. Tommy paused, composing himself. My father died protecting Dean Martin, and Dean Martin spent the rest of his life protecting my father's family. That's not just gratitude. That's love. That's brotherhood. That's the kind of loyalty you don't see anymore. He looked out at the crowd. This isn't a story about a famous singer. It's a story about 2 men who understood what family meant. My father, who gave his life to protect someone he'd sworn to protect, and Dean Martin, who spent 33 years making sure that sacrifice wasn't in vain. Tommy's voice cracked with emotion. Dean told me once that my father was worth 10 of him. He was wrong. They were both worth everything. The church was silent, except for the sound of people crying. Later, at the reception, Tommy found Frank Sinatra. The chairman was 95 now, frail, but still sharp. Your father was a good man, Sinatra said. Dean loved him like a brother. Tommy nodded. I know, and Dean was a good man too. Sinatra agreed. The best. People think they know who Dean Martin was. The drunk act, the smooth singer, the ladies' man. But that was all performance. The real Dean? The real Dean was a guy who spent 33 years taking care of your family because he felt responsible for your father's death. Tommy pointed out that Dean shouldn't have felt responsible, that his father chose to do his job. "I know," Sinatra said. Dean knew that too, intellectually, but the heart doesn't work on logic. Dean carried that guilt until the day he died. Tommy thought about that, about Dean Martin, this legendary entertainer, carrying the weight of Frank Russo's death for more than 3 decades, never talking about it publicly, never using it for publicity or sympathy, just quietly, year after year, sending those checks to Maria, showing up for birthdays and graduations. Being there, that was the real Dean Martin, not the singer on stage, not the movie star, but the man who understood that loyalty meant action, not just words. The story of Frank "Quick" Russo and Dean Martin isn't in the history books. You won't find it in Dean's biographies or in retrospectives about the Rat Pack. It's a quiet story, a private story about 2 men and the bond they shared. But it's the story that mattered most. Frank Russo died doing his job. He tasted poison food meant for Dean Martin and paid with his life. That's loyalty in its purest form. Absolute, unflinching, fatal. Dean Martin spent the rest of his life honoring that sacrifice, not with grand gestures or public declarations, but with quiet, constant support, monthly checks, college tuition, a phone call on birthdays. Being there for Frank's family when Frank couldn't be. That's loyalty too. The kind that lasts decades. The kind that costs you nothing and everything. Vito Jenna thought he could kill Dean Martin and send a message. Instead, he created a different message entirely. He showed the world what happens when you underestimate the bonds between people, when you think loyalty is just a word instead of a way of life. Frank Russo's tombstone is in a cemetery in Los Angeles. It reads, "Beloved husband and father, loyal friend. He died protecting the life of another." Dean Martin is buried a few miles away. And if you believe in such things, maybe they're together somewhere. Frank's still standing guard. Dean's still feeling grateful. 2 brothers bound by sacrifice and loyalty and love. The poisoned veal at the Venetian Room. The hospital where Frank died. The warehouse where Dean confronted Vito. These are just locations, places where events happened. The real story is about what those events revealed. About Frank Russo, who took death meant for another man without hesitation. About Dean Martin, who spent 33 years trying to repay a debt that could never truly be repaid. About loyalty that transcends life and death. That's the story worth remembering. That's the legacy that matters. Not the songs or the movies or the fame, but the moment when one man died for another, and the other man spent the rest of his life making sure that sacrifice meant something. August 15, 1962. The night Frank "Quick" Russo tasted poison food and saved Dean Martin's life. And every day after, when Dean Martin honored that sacrifice by being the kind of man Frank Russo believed he was. That's brotherhood. That's loyalty. That's love.